I would like to report out from the middle of a journey, and the middle of a journey where a lot of the treasure is definitely at least partly buried, uncovering in process. My husband and I are potty training our 2-year-old. She's right there. Shout out to her. And there's a lot of things that I've wanted to quit in my life, but there's nothing that I've quite wanted to quit like I've wanted to quit potty training. And there's a lot of wisdom in quitting. I am definitely not anti-quitting. The Christian queer podcast host and author Glennon Doyle is famous for responding to a journalist who asked her how she doesn't quit by responding, "Oh, I do quit. Quitting is my favorite. Every day I quit, every single day. And I go to sleep, and I wake up, and I begin again. Begin and quit every day." But this is not a message about quitting. It's a message about keeping going and the wisdom that gets revealed amidst the keeping going and amidst the frustration and the powerlessness and the literal and, yes, figurative crap. So how did we get here in a place where I really, really, really want to quit potty training? I don't think you can actually fully quit potty training. Like, you can Glennon Doyle style, like, stop and begin again in like a day or 2 months or 2 years. But I don't think you can just like call it forever. About a year ago, we tried for the first time, and our adorable toddler peed while playing Legos. She peed while playing at the water table. She peed while painting with her cousin, and she peed on her grandfather's shoes and did not seem to show any awareness that this was not the goal. And so we gave it a good old quit. And then a few months later, our daycare was closed for a week, and it seemed like a good time to begin again. And if you perhaps, like me, have read a lot of books and blogs and people's personal opinions and surveyed, in fact, some of you in real life about your potty training advice, you may know that there's this idea that if you take off their pants for 3 days and you let them run around, they'll be potty trained. And let me tell you, maybe that's true for some children, but it wasn't true for my child. And without going into too much detail, let's just say that recently, she has peed in her pants everywhere from the middle of the living room while interviewing a potential new housemate to on the top of the slide at the park. Twice. And so here we are. Twice. She's a very hydrated child. She's, in fact, my child, so she's a very hydrated child. So we are here in the middle of the mess, and I might be a parent near the end of her rope, but I am also still a meaning-making human looking for the buried treasure, looking for what's to be learned here. And I do think I have found a few things buried under loads and loads of dirty laundry and many accidents, and probably the hardest of all, balancing my own frustration and feelings with the little face of a child who so badly wants to please her parents and also has very little interest in taking a break from whatever fascinating thing she is doing in order to try to use the potty. So, a few pieces of treasure I am currently trying to unearth. One is about being present. We heard the words of the poet Rilke read and translated by the late Joanna Macy, the Buddhist theologian, environmentalist, and writer who died a few months ago. And she says, the biggest gift you can give is to be absolutely present. And it's one of those things I've probably heard hundreds of times over my life and still find impossible to do. But it turns out that being present is helpful for healing our world, and it's helpful for dealing with potty training. Because it's true that for me, it's ruminating about the past, that I didn't read the right blogs, that we started too early or too late, or we should have let her grandparents do it, or whatever, or worrying about the future that we're in for 2 to 4 years of poop and panties that makes me most doubt my ability to keep going. And when I'm present, I can remember that, it's just potty training. I very clearly remember asking my midwife toward the end of labor, how many more pushes? And at least in my memory, she said 10, and I said, I cannot do 10. And my dear friend and fellow UU minister Annie, who was present, glared at our very lovely, skilled midwife and said, it doesn't matter how many more, just push the one you're pushing. Be present. The second lesson that I have found buried is actually one that we're all partaking in, many of us right now, which is to laugh. And by laugh, I mean try to get some freaking distance, because potty training is objectively sort of hilarious. You are literally trying to teach a tiny person who is not even tall enough to reach a sink, who thinks Wheels on the Bus is the most musically profound contribution. Apologies. She actually did walk in tonight, look at the musicians set up, and said, when are we singing Wheels on the Bus? Would, if left to her own devices, only eat frozen blueberries, and I can only understand maybe 70% of what she says. I'm expecting her to feel her body, find her way to a toilet that is taller than her, take off her clothes, and then do something that her whole life she's only ever done in her pants. It is funny and easier when I'm laughing about it. The third piece of wisdom of buried treasure that I have unearthed is also one of those ones that I've heard hundreds and hundreds of times and still need to hear. Don't go it alone if you can. The ability to make faces at someone across the room, even right now, some of the parents I know, I'm seeing your faces and know that we are not doing this alone is huge. Oscar and I have made particular faces at each other when we know she has to pee and she refuses to. There's the particular face for when she had a very messy accident in a very fancy art gallery in Santa Fe. Sometimes we don't have a choice. We have to go it alone. But sometimes we have the gift of solidarity and companionship. Someone to make those faces with as we dive for the wipes and the clean clothes yet again. And then the fourth piece of treasure that we don't actually get to know exactly how it ends, and there is wisdom in keeping going anyways. Another way of saying one of our common Unitarian Universalist beliefs that revelation is not sealed. It turns out I don't actually know when my child will be able to reliably use a toilet without accident. I've heard some scarily long estimates of how long it can take, and I don't get to know how long it will last. I've been a community organizer in some fashion for many, many years now, and during those more than a decade of doing social justice work, there have been many moments where I wasn't sure if I could keep going, where I wanted to quit. Not quite the same as potty training quit, but definitely wanted to quit. Our reading was from the late activist and social movement theorist out of Detroit, Grace Lee Boggs. She said, I'm often asked what keeps me going after all these years. And her response, you heard, there is no final struggle. Whether you win or lose, each struggle brings new and more challenging questions. Love is about what we do today, tomorrow, and the day after. I can't tell you at all with any certainty how to potty train a toddler or how to stop deportations or fascism or genocide. What I can tell you and what I know in this community is that we are willing to try, to be present, to try to laugh when it's appropriate and when we can, and to cry and rage when that's more appropriate, to go together, even when it could be easier to isolate or separate. Many of you are familiar with the Boston Immigration Justice Accompaniment Network that I volunteer with. And a few months ago, one of our co-founders, Sarah Kinosky, died of cancer. Maybe some of you knew her or got emails from her. For years, she coordinated immigration court accompaniment, recruited new host families for folks who needed them. And besides her persistence, she was known for her wit and her sharp style, her organized spreadsheets, and for being an incredible parent. At her memorial, loved ones shared how, even through her illness, when asked if there was anything that she needed, she would say what she needed was to be connected to the work of justice and fighting fascism. She would do data entry or court accompaniment when she was well enough to. She wrote emails from the waiting room of Dana-Farber. And when asked in her last days what message she had for us, for the still living, she said, "Keep going." I think she would have had amazing advice for me about potty training. And I wish I could ask her, how did you work and parent and organize and be a partner and tend to your own spirit? And how did you keep doing it when you were so sick? I don't know what she would have said, but I know it would have been pithy and true. Rilke's words, "Just keep going. No feeling is final. Give me your hand." We're in the middle of many, many, many different journeys, looking for the wisdom, the buried treasure that might be hard to find. Here's a little that I've found. Be present, laugh, go together, and just keep going, because we don't know what we'll find. That is enough treasure, at least for now. And let me know if you have any potty training advice. There is buried treasure here, I'm convinced, in the keeping going. There must be, right? There's gotta be. Those who are caged by ICE fight from inside jails for freedom. They say, keep going. Organizers in Palestine fighting famine say, keep going. The ancestors say, keep going. Grace Lee Boggs says, keep going. Joanna Macy says, keep going. Sarah Kinosky says, keep going. Onward we go.